Hi, I'm Chris Murphy. I'm Vice President and General Manager of Viral Vector Services, part of the Thermo Fisher Scientific Network. I'm going to talk a bit today. First of all, I actually want to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak today. And really what I want to focus my talk on are viral vector products and really how we can bring these to market and really what are some of the challenges and frankly opportunities to build capacity and capability to realize the promise of these medicines. So I'm going to take a few minutes to go through some background, and then I'll talk a bit about some of the areas that I think are really important for us to focus on as innovators and service providers. So first, a little bit about Thermo Fisher Scientific, the world leader in serving science. Our mission is to enable our customers to make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer. We have a number of businesses that support the industry. Whether it's on materials, whether it's on services, instrumentation, equipment, you name it, we make it. We do this through now what would be in excess of 80,000 colleagues, many of which are scientists focused on R&D. We spend a good deal of money on R&D each year to help our customers find solutions to their challenges and to, again, bring the world healthier, cleaner, and safer. And we've had very strong growth as a business given the growth in our industry. And when we think about this sort of web of the services and the materials, equipment, reagents, instrumentation, we think of this unique value proposition for pharma and biotech. And the way we look at it is how can we help our customers by integrating more seamlessly, whether it's access to materials, access to a different part of our service provisions, to really partner with our customers from discovery to cure. And I think that's the most important element we think about. We always think about how we can help people start with us, and then we can partner with them, find solutions, and really help them in the most seamless way advance these medicines to realization to people who need them. And within our service side, we have a number of areas we focus in on. Of course, I'll speak today a bit about the gene therapy viral vector side. We also have cell therapy. We have drug substance, both for biologics as well as API. We have significant capabilities on drug product, both in Europe and the United States, North America. We have a clinical trials division that really does focus on distribution, packaging, logistics, really enabling customers to bring their medicines through clinical development. And of course, we have commercial packaging as well. And really our idea here is, how do we provide this expertise in development, clinical trial logistics, commercial manufacturing through really flexible models? Because we recognize that depending on the size of the company, depending on the stage of the product and the like, there may need to be some flexible ways of structuring how we work together to ensure it really does enable seeing these medicines to people in need. And we really do want to partner from the beginning. And of course, from our perspective, and I'll talk about this a bit in the presentation, it is achieved through our sites globally, but also some of the central themes of how we think about our work, particularly around the quality culture and some of the ways we think about our colleagues, which again, I'll touch on more later in the presentation. And importantly, we are driving to serve more than 2 million people across the world every day. And that is our mission and our drive. And we're extremely excited to be having such a role in the health of people. And when you think about integrated services, there's a lot of inputs. If you kind of look at the left side of this, that are challenges for innovators every day, whether it's shortage on just capacity to make a product, how they get their product into certain markets. There's a constantly evolving regulatory environment. There's logistics, distribution, the supply chain things, but also, as many of you are aware, there's a lot of challenges right now with just critical materials and reagents and access to those, particularly with all the work going on for the COVID-19 vaccines. So really, we think about these integrated solutions to really help with the manufacturing capacity across major markets. And when we think about our viral vector services piece, we think about how do we integrate this? And, many of our processes, for example, in viral vector utilize transfection as a way to make vectors. So how do we help with access to plasmids? And I'll talk a bit more about some of the focus we have there. How do we, at the end of making a viral vector, also have places to send it where cells are processed as part of a CAR T technology or cell therapy? And of course, how do we use world-class distribution, logistics, and warehousing support the storage and the distribution of the product. And this is a sort of a simple view of a workflow that is typical for making viral vectors. And again, this sort of accentuates all the different places in which our unique value proposition can come to light, whether it's through resins, single-use technology, plasmids, as I mentioned, cold chain, we have fill finish capabilities and like so. So it's really exciting because we are all organized around this very centered sense of purpose around people who need these medicines, and it's exciting to be able to bring to bear all the things within our network to help realize this for customers. So let's talk for a minute about regenerative medicine. So this is a broad terminology, and I use that term simply because I got some of these numbers out of the ARM 2020 annual report, which just came out. But this market, and gene therapy, of course, and viral vectors, a big part of advanced regenerative medicine, continues to be very strong. You know, there's over 800 products that are in development today just for gene therapies and gene modified cell therapies like CAR T technology. Last year, there were about 5 molecules approved. There were a couple that were delayed. I'll talk a little bit about that in the challenges. But there's over 90 phase 3 trials underway, which is a doubling from 2019. So again, you're seeing a lot of this movement from somewhat rapid movement from phase 1-2 trials into the late stage pivotal trials. And really importantly, 2020, as much as it was a very challenging year, of course, for everyone across the globe with the pandemic, was a year where viral vector modality really was qualified, validated, and now, of course, approved to address public health issues such as COVID-19. So I think that was a really important acceleration of the value of viral vectors, not just in treating rare diseases and cancers, but also in addressing public health issues. And, you know, I'd say with this technology, of course, viral vector and mRNA, it's been an unbelievable success and really a step change in the evolution of medicine for our civilization. So phenomenal. And of course, the investments have been, again, super strong. I think this was the largest year of investment, 2020, in the industry, you know, and despite the pandemic, significant continued investment going into the industry. So when you add up the fact that these are now demonstrated as safe and effective, these therapies, the regulators, of course, are supportive of these, you know, provided we provide the right data and have the right controls, and you continue to see investments that will advance technology, as well as, you know, again, more companies that are able to get into advancing their ideas and their products. It's phenomenal sort of mix and the right ingredients really to realize these medicines. But it's not without challenge. And I think it's a good reminder, particularly in viral vector, that it is still a relatively immature manufacturing technology, and the analytics themselves as well are still in their moment of evolution. And so we are seeing some headwinds have happened in the year, you know, where there were delays in approvals of products that seem to be more linked to CMC and comparability questions, some of them on clinical trial design. The analytics themselves are evolving. These are large molecules, but require a lot of very specific methodologies to really probe inside a virus and understand and characterize them better, particularly as that relates to comparability. Capacity, I'll show in the next slide, continues to be a challenge. And of course, you know, without people and expertise, you're not going to continue to grow. So all that investment is, of course, going to pay for a lot more people to be hired into the industry. And it has not gone, it's gone noticed by me, certainly, and by many on this at this meeting, how important people are to the realization is they're the number one ingredient, really. And they also need to develop the expertise and process knowledge and understanding that is needed to really be really strong at making these types of products. Processes are not robust quite yet, and the yields are not where we really want them to be. So that's, again, an area that we need to get better at. And of course, the materials and supply chain is a huge challenge for everybody, particularly as COVID, with the use of single-use technology, particularly for viral vector vaccines, is really putting a huge strain on suppliers of these materials that are needed for gene therapies as well. So really, our thinking is, how do we help our innovators and the patients that they serve in getting through these challenges? And again, just to kind of reiterate a couple points on this, I think one is it just kind of shows you sort of an end of decade view. This might be a little bit outdated. It's plus or minus a certain number, but the growth continues to be unquestioned as far as the molecules that are in development, and of course the number of trials that are expected. And if you go to the bottom right here, I mean, this is again about a year or so old graph. I would say it hasn't changed too much in that, yes, there's more and more capacity coming online. I'll talk a bit about some of our work on that side. But when you look at the demands that are going to be driven by the clinical trials and the molecules in development, we're still going to fall short. The other interesting thing is this upper right graph, which is, again, just as a reminder that gene therapies for rare disease in particular have sort of a unique supply chain paradigm in that you'd expect to treat your patient population in the first few years, and then the amount of vector that you might need gets down to more the incident rate of the rare disease. So that does create challenges, I think, for innovators and how they manage and plan their capacity, given there will be a drop off in production needs. Except for oncology, of course, where oncology is something that there's a sort of a stabilized incident rate, and this would be more for like CAR T type viral vector products and the like. And then just on the other element of this, of course, is there's complex processes, and there's not one process to make viral vectors. And of course, depending on where you dose and the treatment or indication you're looking to treat it'll have a very wide range of needs as far as the amount of viral vectors. So that means that some companies are okay with scales that don't produce super high yields or not, or processes that maybe scale out versus scale up, versus some that are driving to have the more scalable, more traditionally scalable things like stir tank technology and the like. But we're still seeing work on adherent processes as well as suspension. We're still seeing work with transfection versus co-infection technologies like using insect virus, baculovirus. So this does demand, and really depending on your indication, you may choose one technology or the other, and that indication could also include what are the quality attributes you need to obtain depending on where you're administering your viral vector. So really continues to require deep technical expertise and some flexibility on the technology. And I think what was interesting with COVID this year was that many facilities that were designed to make viral vectors were quickly able to transfer over to making COVID vaccine using the viral vector technology, because they're designing their facilities already with that sort of flexibility to be able to manage different scales of technology, and of course BBL2 to support the production of viral vectors. So when I think about viral vector services, and our mantra, our battle cry this year is boldly forward, there's really four key things, and I'll go through a few of these in the rest of my talk. I think one is, of course, the innovators, and I won't spend any more time on that. There's many innovators on this call at this meeting, and our job number one is to help them realize the promise of these extraordinary medicines, again, whether it's for rare disease, cancer, or even for vaccination. Colleagues are the differentiating factor, so I'll spend a little more time on that, particularly around the idea of critical thinkers and people that are really wired to problem solve, people that recognize that what they do every day is actually going to impact somebody who's very sick, people that know how to work with each other. These are really important factors that will help realize the capabilities and the technology. And really, when I do talk about capability and technology, there are things that, how do we enable and remove barriers to success for our colleagues through technology, but also really streamline and make more cost-effective the production processes or the development processes that we go through. And in addition, how do we also increase our unique value proposition to help support the entire sort of workflow of the entire supply chain to make these vectors? And of course, capacity. It goes without saying, there was a slide already shown to show you where capacity is at. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our investments in capacity, and not just capacity, scaling up and making more and more suites, but also geographical view of that. And of course, there's some work we've done on that to expand our geographical reach. So these are, our view, the key ingredients to delivering on the promise of these medicines. So I'll take a few minutes to go through a few of these sections. So I'm just going to start with quality. The culture of quality is foundational. This is something that we believe across Thermo Fisher Scientific and particularly in our pharma services group. And we put it at the center of this concept of quantum quality, which is really an integrated approach to focus on zero defects. And just to highlight a few areas, this concept of safety first, quality always, culture mindset, this, we call it a medicinal mind. And the idea there simply is, if you always are remembering that you're making a medicine that has to go into somebody that usually isn't doing well, somebody that's sick, that will often drive this idea of quality always, safety first, of course. And safety is not just for the safety of the product, but it's for safety of colleagues in the operations. We also recognize we can over-design and over-engineer procedures that make it actually harder to execute the really important parts of a process. So we spend a lot of time focusing on simplifying, making procedures more accessible, standardizing, and the like. And we have something called practical process improvement, which is also focusing in on the support of business processes so that we can ensure that folks take the least amount of steps to get something done, but obviously make sure that the important factors of that process are not compromised as far as the quality. Root cause identification and really discipline around this. We were actually inserting a lot of what we call problem solvers into our operations because we want them to be focused on helping folks in the operation identify a potential problem and solve it. And also when there is a problem, how do we get to the root cause and be disciplined on corrective actions? And of course, with that, how are we now more proactive with those preventative actions? And training, of course, as I mentioned earlier, we're bringing on lots of new colleagues. Everybody is in this industry, and really, how do we get better and better at robust training programs? And it's not just moving from a read and understand mindset to more of a demonstrative sort of training approach, but also using technologies like alternate reality, virtual reality technologies to help folks get inside a process without having to go and compromise a clean room or a customer's product. So really this integrated approach is crucial. And, of course, this has to be supported by the right systems and regulatory support. And, the big ones for me on this slide are really this idea of the phase appropriate nature of GMPs as you're going through the clinical development timeline. There's table stakes and there's things that are become, as the product advances, that you should focus more on. And we do this in partnership with customers because it's really vital that customers bring a wealth of expertise on quality, of course, and that we're aligned with that so that everybody's singing from the same sheet of music as we work with regulators towards the commercialization. And because, Patheon Pharma Services Group is really, there's 55 plus sites across our network, we're being inspected over 50, 60 times a year. So really we get so much insight and intel on the areas that we need to continue to focus on and get better at as far as enabling success, as far as pre-product licensing inspections and the like. So there's a lot of really good information we share across the group to make sure we have the best practices in place. And then with systems, of course, how do we also have systems that are scaled and at the right level of compliance to ensure that they're defendable, but also really kind of mirror many of our customer systems, which can actually enable us being viewed more as an extension of their sort of manufacturing footprint, which we think is really important. And on the regulatory side, increasingly important with viral vector, of course, these products are now being approved. So, really having a focus on that support and recognizing that we need to liaise with the innovators to make sure that they get the right information when they need it to ensure that the regulators have the information they need to help make decisions on approvals of changes or approvals of licenses. So very, very significant focus for us. And, as you move through quality, you start talking about analytics, and of course there's QC release testing and the like. For me, this is a relatively simple slide. I think the point I'm just trying to make, and this just sort of highlights a lot of, some of these are outdated technologies like, electron microscopy isn't used so much anymore as a release test, but I'm just trying to make the point that, we need robust analytics to unlock process understanding and improvement. And I think that's sometimes not prioritized as much as it needs to be upfront in the development phases of the product. I think sometimes we live with sort of less than ideal analytics, and we get later into the clinical development, and it turns out those aren't strong enough to really characterize the product enough to either help unlock potential to improve the process, but also to really understand when there's process changes that the product itself didn't change. And I do think that has been a challenge for some customers and some innovators as they've advanced through clinical development quite rapidly. So investing early in analytics and ensure they match the process that you're running. That's important, particularly when I mentioned that there's a number of platform processes to make viral vectors. And of course, that they're delivering on consistent measures of quality attributes so that we can help innovators as well as regulators understand the safety of the products, understand and link efficacy to quality attributes, and of course, realize these products for people who need them. And on the process side, a lot of work needs to happen really on the process. I do think you're going to probably see an increasing sort of focus on one or two platform technologies that will sort of take the lead as far as how we make viral vectors. This is just a simple view of sort of how we make the products. I'm not going to go into all the details here. It's pretty dense. But suffice it to say, things like transfection, for example, we see that increasingly as there's some great reagents available, but also increasingly it's an engineering problem to solve. How do we get precipitates to form at the right amount of time, and how do we get great mixing and understand the mixing, for example, to get precipitates into cells to make more virus, as one example. Of course, there's a lot of the classic process development work you'd need to do with a protein that is very applicable, of course, to viral vector. The difference there is there's a little more nuance and challenge, I think, around, for example, enriching empty capsids. So that's an important thing that your processes will generate capsids. They should encapsulate your DNA, which delivers your gene of interest. But if there's a lot of capsids without DNA in it, that's a concern from a product safety and product quality perspective. So we need to find ways to improve yield, but at the same time ensure that there's a high level of full capsids in the process. So these are just some areas that we talk about quite a bit and think about how we're going to innovate on. And I think what's key here, of course, is this thing on the right, which is the expertise required. So we are continuing to invest in these areas around process development. I mean, certainly process science and understanding the basic virology, the science of molecular biology is crucial. But in addition, really those traditional biologics expertise has been built through monoclonal antibodies, recombinant protein development, around process analytical technology, process engineering and scale up, process characterization, of course, the ability to transfer, whether it's from an innovator into one of our operations or whether it's within our operations, is crucial. And of course, a big part of that is how do we manage and maintain a great repository of knowledge that's generated through the development process. Really crucial. And I think these are the advancements that need to be focused on to both ensure more and more robustness in the processes, but also, of course, to increase yields and help improve on the cost of goods for these materials. And on material side, this is just a simple pictorial of a bunch of the materials that you'll see in any given viral vector process. It's no longer just a cell bank that you have to characterize really well, and then you're more focused on how do you get out of serum, for example, which is, I'd say, how recombinant protein production and monoclonal antibody production evolved over the last few decades. You now have to worry about the supply of your plasmid. You have to worry about your viral banks and how they're stored and generated, how many passages on the banks. Is there any genetic shifts? And of course, there's a big focus, of course, now on single-use technology. And of course, then you've got to make sure that your secondary suppliers to your single-use company are in control and the film isn't changing, things like that could impact the quality of the product. So there's a number of variables I've listed here. I think the point of this slide is you need exceptional supply chain and materials management and business processes that can give you the visibility of changes in suppliers. So that's part of your quality system, like supplier notification. But in addition, how do you really get ahead of the ordering and the management of those materials, given there's such a strain on suppliers of these materials to meet the needs and demands, particularly now that COVID is using these materials for public health. And then just as we think about how we bring this together, we think of something we call turnkey, which is really, you can see this sort of very convoluted process on the left. Maybe it's unfairly convoluted, but that's kind of how people often look at process improvement. They pick areas where the yield's not so great and they try to fix that one unit operation. We're thinking of a holistic view on a platform process approach to making lentiviruses and associated viruses that really combines the material elements, the analytics, obviously the process being consistent, robust, and reproducible, with this concept that everything is sort of well-defined up front. The only difference is the gene of interest, which I know can have an impact, of course, on your process. And how does this really accelerate drug development by helping create a robust CMC? And really, ultimately, how do we reduce the time and cost to bring these transformative medicines to market? So this is where we're pulling together the unique value proposition in Thermo Fisher to help really realize these, to really augment these areas and create a workflow that could really be considered top class for innovators. So I got a few more slides. I'm going to kind of quickly go through a little bit on our capacity. So this is sort of a global map view of sort of where we're at with viral vector services, where some cell therapy operations, there's storage and clinical supply depots, and of course plasmid. And we've invested recently, and I'll go through a few slides on plasmid, the Henogen acquisition, as well as our Plainville site. But really, when you think about our global capabilities, we're at 20 years of industry experience amongst our operations. And many folks are tenured with 10, 15 years working on gene therapy products. We've had many programs, many lots manufactured. We expect to have a number of products commercialized this year. 1,400 team members across the globe. Again, these focuses on analytical process development, commercial manufacturing, engineering. And really by next year, we'd expect to have about 700,000 square foot of capacity across the globe with about 50 drug substance suites and about 7 drug product lines to support this ever-growing industry. And just a comment or two on some of our operations. So this is a quick highlight of our European operation, which was formerly known as Henogen, which is now our Viral Vector Services EU business. We're actually up to about 400 people now in Belgium, and they are focused on, they are a partner in production of COVID-19 vaccine, in addition to supporting a number of gene therapy programs. And they're very complementary. Their capabilities are very much complementary to what was established for VBS North America through the Brammer acquisition. So what's great is we're really now combining forces and identifying ways we can maximize the expertise, capacity, and supply chain, even on that front, across all of our operations. And of course, they have, much like the VBS North America, deep expertise in a number of viral vector platforms, as well as classes of vectors or groups of vectors. So we really, have now kind of established this European operation, which gives us very large worldwide presence, but also does enable us more opportunity to help customers, depending on the markets they want to introduce their product in. For plasmids, again, this is a critical raw material, critical starting material for the production of viral vectors using transfection. And, we recognize customers more and more need two things. One is they need more access to capacity to make plasmids, but also they need GMP plasmids, because this is such a critical starting material. We want to make sure that we're making a plasmid that would be considered a GMP plasmid. So that means it could either be used to support a production process to make viral vector, or could actually be used as a product. And that is the capacity we're building. And we've established a facility and operations in Watertown, Massachusetts to make that, which is online in a few months. And in addition, we're building a site in Carlsbad, California for this purpose. So again, this way we can really help be an end-to-end solution provider for our customers. And then just on our viral vector facility that's under construction in Plainville, Massachusetts, it's going to be, as far as dedicated viral vector capacity, I think probably the largest facility in the world for that, close to 300,000 square feet. It'll have a full-scale engineering lab, support scale-up studies. we'll be employing digital state-of-the-art technology there. And of course, it's part of our cluster in Massachusetts and really providing capacity and really flexible capacity support customers' needs, particularly as they go to commercialization. I'm going to take 2 minutes and wrap up on people. I don't want to rush through it because it's so important, but we think about our culture being underpinned by people and how they make the difference, and it's tied to quality culture. It's tied to our technology. Of course, at the top of that is our patients we serve, and I've already mentioned some of the key attributes. I think the point of this slide is really say we have great people systems at Thermo Fisher, and those help guide the development of our not just leaders, but anybody who's joined our business. And there's a couple of competencies we focus in on there. And of course, we also complement this with operational systems that really enable the culture by how we do more exception-based focus, sort of actioning on challenges and issues in our operations, and really make sure we work as one team to realize the product versus a functional view of things. And we complement this with sort of a colleague experience focus, and then how do we create talent for the growth of our business. And I think onboarding is the one thing I'd comment on here, and that is how do we ensure that when people come into the business that we can really give them a great experience to understand our culture, values, but also get them really ready to operate on the floor. So that's something that we are keenly focused on. And of course, to us, their attributes for success, and there's the mindsets and behaviors. And, we have this kind of from to mentality of, just to highlight a few things, making sure that we're integrated as an organization driven by the value stream. The planning is integrated, ownership is clear. We have a culture that's fix it versus live with it, and that we're proactive, and really readiness is something we demonstrate versus we say we're ready, and I think that's a really important point for our culture. How do we go out in the business through Gemba, and how do we ensure that we can see our colleagues are ready to go, and also they appreciate, of course, the engagement of leadership in the operation to give them the vote of confidence that they're ready to go. So we have to be conscious of these elements as we think about not just our new colleagues, but our leadership. So with that, I want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to addressing more of your questions in the chat function. So thank you.